Okay, perfect. I would like to thank Mario, Carlos, and all GMDH Streamline for having me for this webinar. It has been such an honor. Throughout my career, I have been working on case studies on different enterprises in different continents, but this is my first time working with Latin American countries. And it's actually, I'm very interested and very excited for this webinar, more than most of the webinars I did throughout 2021. So let's start our presentation. Today, we are going to be speaking about supply chains in the time of COVID. I guess most of us are checking updates and news feed for updates about the current supply chain crisis and how is it affecting our daily life and our purchasing habits. Sometimes we can find products that are imported and the lead times are getting very, very much longer, which is affecting the way we are managing our supply chains. But to be able to discuss this and the reasons this is happening right now, we have to go back into the early of 2020 with the start of the COVID outbreak and to start discussing the initial phases that led to the current supply chain crisis. So this is going to be our agenda for today. First, we're going to discuss the outbreak case studies. What were the responses of different of companies with different supply chain models and strategies to the outbreak, and what were the results of each case study. We're going to mention an FMCG company and a face masks company with two different strategies. Then we're going to speak about the outbreak results. What happened in the end of 2020? What are the changes in the mindsets, and what were the initial phases of the supply chain crisis? Then we are going to speak about the supply chain crisis that's happening right now. Where are the bottlenecks, the delays, and all the results of this crisis? And hopefully we are going to give some insights about 2022 and whether we're going to get rid of this crisis or not. So before we go, allow me to introduce myself. I believe Mario and Carlos already did, but let me just redo it. I was supply chain consultant in a Singaporean company called Iron Rush. For 9 months, I was responsible for managing their supply chain strategies, their planning phases, and all these stuff. Currently, I'm contracted with GMDH Streamline. That's why I'm here. And I have the Bachelor of Logistics, major of Supply Chain from the Arab Academy. I'm a certified industrial engineer from Missouri State University. I do teach sometimes in supply chain in the Arab Academy, and currently I teach industrial engineering in Missouri State University remotely, thanks to COVID. Finally, I'm a projects section head, lean manufacturing projects section head in one of the largest food manufacturers in the Middle East. It's called Americana Group. So let's start our presentation with the first topic, which is the outbreak case studies. So before the COVID, a lot of companies started shifting their supply chain strategies to a more modern approach by depending more on third parties and outsourcing. Having less locations and central distribution centers started to become a priority for a lot of companies, which was not the perfect option for all industries, to be honest, especially when it was first tested in the first outbreak. So when the COVID outbreak took place in 2020, the global supply chains responded in very different ways, according to each company's strategy and risk management plan. To discuss further in details, let's discuss some real-life case studies from FMCG company and a face mask company in Egypt. I will not be mentioning names, but these are real case studies, okay? So if you ask a simple question, which is, which strategy is better to manage your supply chain? Is it an old school strategy with many locations and the most selling areas with own fleet of trucks, or a modern strategy with a central DC and outsourced fleet of trucks? Which of them would survive the first impact of the COVID outbreak? To be honest, actually, that's a tricky question, because in reality, there is no correct or wrong supply chain strategy, but it's actually each of them has its own advantage and disadvantage and has the best situation to be used in. So let's start with the FMCG company. In Egypt, when the COVID started, a curfew was made, so there are limited time of transportation available. The old school strategy companies, for example, let's say company number, let's use annotations. So that's the old school company, let's call it X, and here let's call it Y, okay? So the company X have a lot of DCs in all of their sales areas, and each DC has high stocks of products that are enough to serve this specific area for some days. When the curfew took place, the drivers of the demand behavior or the purchasing behavior of the customers have shifted too much from being I'm loyal to this product or I need this product, but actually it shifted to availability driven purchasing behavior. So in COVID right now, I'm seeing people panicking, people going to the retail stores, they're just buy whatever they have in front of them. So the market competition shifted from all other factors about product features or being expensive or cheap, good design or bad design. It all was summarized into availability. So the company that was able to become or have its products available the most of the time actually sold the best during the COVID outbreak. On the other hand, companies that got modern supply chain strategies with only a central DC and outsourced fleet. The outsourced fleet companies did not have the luxury to fulfill the booming demand coming from the market. So in the end, they found themselves unable to fulfill the orders coming from all their partners. So to be fair enough, they just distributed the amount of wasted demand that they cannot fulfill equally on their customers. So the companies could not fulfill the demand on time, in addition to longer lead time, because now there are too much delays. The transportation window is now very, very much shorter due to the curfew. So their fulfillment rate and their product renewal date on shelves lead time was very, very much longer compared to the old school strategies. But that's on terms on demand and lead time. But let's recheck it from the perspective of the capital invested in these strategies. The old school one, to be able to fulfill this demand, they invested a lot of money in building their large number of DCs or renting them and purchasing their own fleet, on hiring their drivers and in keeping them in the times of COVID outbreaks. So the old school strategies invested a lot of money, a lot more than the modern strategies, but they earned their market share on the first test from a global risk like COVID outbreak. So from this case study, we can deduce that the old school strategies won. But actually, on the other case study about the face masks, things were really very different. So on the face masks, suddenly a local company that's working on creating face masks, they produce like 10,000 face masks per month. And if they sold 90% of them, they would be very happy, and that's it. And suddenly, a country that has the population of 100 million people are demanding one face mask each day. So their demand suddenly boomed up from 10,000 or even 50,000 face masks per day into 100 million face masks per day. So they had two options. Either they go the old school way and they buy a new expansions, buy new production lines, and leading to hiring new people, buying more fleet, more warehouses. And this is all going to lead to huge investing need, which eventually led to having the price per face mask jump from 1 Egyptian pound into 10 Egyptian pounds. Okay, so this was the reality, and it stayed like this, and they kept winning for like 1 month when the modern strategies had their comeback. So other people decided not to take the risk of investing this much of capital on something that is going to be temporary, because we does not know if COVID is going to be a long run outbreak or it's going to be ending by the end of this year. So they went on and rented the production lines from the closing production lines that are now stopping because most of the retail stores now closed due to curfew. So they rented the production lines and they invented newly the cloth face masks that can be used on the duration of 2 or 3 days. So the face masks were much cheaper than the one-use face mask. And also, the moment the demand is going to start declining, they can simply stop the contract of the rent of the production lines, and they are on the safe side. Couple of months after, the ports were starting to open, and the imported face masks started to reach the local market. And the surprise that the imported face masks were much cheaper than the ones that were created by the old school strategies. So on this moment, the people who invested in expanding their production capabilities and their supply chain capabilities suddenly found themselves losing the market, and they are much more expensive than the current imported competitor. And they cannot simply stop their production because they already invested and hired a lot of people. And the amount of profit they gained throughout 2 or 3 months has just reflected back to them into huge losses. On the other hand, people who created the other face masks from rented production lines, they found themselves simply too close to the imported prices, and if they found themselves they are going to lose, simply they're going to lower their production through the rent, and that's it. All these changes in supply chain strategies, all these dynamic actions, actually, each action of these caused some like backfire on the prices, on the market share of each product in the market. And I believe it was the initial steps leading to the current supply chain crisis. This leads us to the second point, which is the shipping issue or the outbreak results. After we have discussed the supply chain perspective of the outbreak, let's discuss the logistics perspective. When the ports were closed in 2020, the supply power was weakened badly, while the demand was grouping up, being consolidated. The purchasing habits of the people is increasing badly, because if you have checked the online purchases throughout 2020 and 2019, you will find huge increases in the online purchasing habits. So the moment the ports started to open once again, this caused a shortage in the supply. And in the language of economics, we have a shortage of supply and a large amount of booming demand. This is going to lead to lead time increases and definitely pricing spikes. So if you compare a shipping price, for example, from Sri Lanka to Singapore on 2019, and then we compared the same trip today, you will find it like maybe 5 or 6 times more the price from 2019, with a huge amount of lead time added to the process of the shipping. But to be honest, what exactly is causing the lead time to increase? Is it the shipping time in sea, or is it the port handling, or is it the time taken just for the container to be loaded to the ship? Just imagine that a port that have like the capacity of 1 million containers suddenly has the demand of 2 million containers. The number of labor or headcount that was able to move the 1 million container in a specific time frame suddenly decreased. So the time frame already increased per time taken per container increased, and the number of ships actually operating started to go down. So suddenly you have a large number of containers trying to be loaded on the same short window of time. The lead time, I believe in China, the lead time was 1 day. Now it's 3 days, which is 3 times more the lead time in 2019. In USA, the President Joe Biden just announced that the ports are going to start working for 24 hours for the first time in history. So countries are trying to duplicate the time available for loading just to cope with the booming demand. But again, it's a simple and very, very simple economics equation. So to solve it, we either going to restructure our buying habits and readjust our demand, or most importantly, strengthen our supplying power by strengthening our supplying tools, whether by improving the ports capabilities, adding more equipment, hiring more people. So for example, in Europe, they are having another crisis in their supply chains because they have huge lead times and higher costs while they are moving their products through land without any shipping or any ports. Because in COVID, a lot of truck drivers were laid off from their jobs, and they found other jobs during the outbreak. And right now, they found that their salaries are not good enough for them to go back for the truck driving career, which left the companies stranded with trucks that have no drivers. You can check right now them trying to duplicate their salaries just to bring the drivers back or bring anyone to drive their trucks and to smooth the supply chain crisis as much as possible. So this was the first driver of the crisis that is taking place right now in 2021. But before we drive through out this point, let's check out other results that took place due to the outbreak. So the buying habits that's changed too much throughout the last couple of years, starting 2020 till now. So in early 2020, people did not rely this much on online purchasing and on online teaching. Meetings like this was held in conference halls and not online. Which one of us did use Zoom this much before 2020? I guess it's a very, very minor category. For me as a lecturer, I did not believe in online lectures because I did not believe students are going to be paying attention to what they're hearing. But right now, it's like 2 years we are giving them online lectures and they're just doing great as same as they are into the university. So the deviations, the market changes started creating deviations. So right now, if you have checked the renting cost of like conference halls of physical products, you'll find it much more expensive than doing it online. Let's give another example. In June 2020, if you search Google on supply chain courses, advanced courses, of course, you won't find a lot of dedicated courses in different planning functions and all these stuff. Also, if you went through looking for beginners courses of supply chain, you'll also find that there are maybe very, very basic courses in YouTube, but you won't find any courses that are going to take you from A to Z during some couple of hours. So I have checked Udemy, I have checked Udacity, different websites of online learning, and I didn't find strong enough supply chain courses at the time. But suddenly, on August 2020, only 2 months from the first check, if you write supply chain on this month, you'll find amazing number of supply chain courses done with a lot of supply chain professionals worldwide. These people have restructured their selling channels from physical selling channels and marketing channels into digital channels. So for me as an instructor, instead of wasting like 10 hours each week or re-elaborating each point, and I am repeating the same session again and again each week for different groups, I can simply record it and add it on a website, and people can simply watch it without me duplicating the time taken to illustrate the same points over and over again. Zara, for example, Zara closed a large number of retail stores in Europe, and they replaced them with their new online e-store with a large number of discounts. And actually, they did it in a very significant time because they shifted from the physical distribution sales channels into the from the physical to the digital channels in like no time, really no time. But let's look at it from another perspective. The fast shifting couldn't happen without huge number of employees being laid off from their work. So after the COVID, let's say in 2022, things are now perfectly done. And the COVID vaccine is working. We found medicine to kill the virus, and life has shifted back to the normal before the outbreak. Zara is going to find themselves without any solid ground in the physical sales distribution channels because they have lost their retail stores and their employees. So they are going to need to invest a large amount of money just to retake what they lost willingly while the outbreak was taking place. So again, this changes the fact that the normal is not normal anyway. We are now shifting into a new normal. So right now, the new normal is you can buy whatever you want online. It's going to be much cheaper than you can buy it physically. You are going to save the time. You are going to save the effort to go and grab it yourself. It's going to get to your home. And most importantly, you are going to reduce the number of times you're going to be at risk of capturing the virus. Since right now we are going to keep ourselves safe, as much safe as possible. So you are trying to get out of your home as less as possible. If in case you are working offline, of course. Okay, so let's move. No, not yet. So let's move to the third point, which is the supply chain crisis that's happening right now. Since we mentioned the shortage of supply chain and the shortage, of supply and the peaks of demand caused that crisis, but what caused these two factors to take these aggressive directions? Employees, truck drivers, we have mentioned a lot of drivers. Also, when the ports closed, they were not empty. So we are talking about 1 million increase in the daily number of containers that are entering the ports. But remember that you are already opening with a large number of containers consolidated throughout the time that the ports were already closed in, which is causing some delays actually. If you are trying to buy the new iPhone 13, you will find that the phone is going to be at your side like 1 or 1.5 months of lead time. That can be stretched even more according to the crisis. Before the COVID, things did not take this much time to reach you. So right now, people are starting to restructure their buying habits. They are trying to check if, do I really want to buy this new phone, or I can maybe keep my iPhone 12 for now till the crisis is over. This is going to affect very much the demand coming from the market to specific products. If you have checked the charts from 2022, you'll find specific industries have significant increases in their demand, and other industries have been losing things up. So for example, the restaurants, the clubs, all the conference halls and all these stuff, they have been losing too much because people right now are tending to be more healthy. They are calculating their chances of capturing the virus. So they are tending to eat more at their homes, more than at the restaurants like before. That's why restaurants are trying to use specific sprays just to keep things clean and to market themselves. They are COVID-free places. You can eat freely. You must wear your mask while you're eating and all these stuff. Because if they did not do this, still they are investing a lot of money in these sprays, by the way, and the face masks. But if they did not do this, they are going to lose their place in the market. So since they are investing a lot of money in new additions into the cost of the product, so eventually the price of the product is going to shift up as well. So as we can see, everything is just moving dynamically in different directions. The way we are restructuring our priorities and managing our supply chain are even being changed, because in 2019, if you have proposed a budget for a risk management plan for your company, people are just going to say, it's not our priority for now. What could happen and cause a risk for us right now? We are dominating the market. We are in full control out of the market. So an example, this happened in 2008 on the economic crisis. People and companies did not expect at all that they could bankrupt in this very short amount of time. They were already preparing marketing campaigns. They were preparing promotions. They've been preparing forecasts for the new year. Everything was going smooth as planned. Then suddenly, boom, everything stopped and they started bankrupting. The same thing happened in COVID because we did not learn the lesson last time, but we did this time. Companies now are starting to study their risk mitigation plans and whether they can survive another global risk or not. What steps and initiatives can they do to keep themselves from losing ground if any other type of risks appeared? So since we mentioned the shortage of supply chain and the peaks, let's now talk about the predictions of 2020. To be honest, I personally do not believe this is going to get any better anytime soon, because the current pace and the direction we're moving in is that we are not paying any attention or enough attention to the simple drivers of the crisis, which are the supply and demand and the gap that's increasing between them. So again, unless we strengthen our supply chain tools to cope with the booming demand, or unless we start adjusting our buying habits to fit with our supply capabilities, the crisis will stay, if not increase day after day. But actually, this is not all, because there are a lot of positive parts, by the way, from the supply chain crisis. So for example, now your company is importing, for example, some sort of raw material from Europe. The lead time was only 1 month. Now the lead time is 6 months. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look for a local a supplier that can replace, even if for a temporary basis, the imported product, because you do not want your operations to stop. So this is going to open the door for startups, especially from the local origin, to compete once more against the foreign or the imported raw materials or products. And to do so, they have to study the market very well. They have to have the technology, but most importantly, they must have the minimum amount of waste from their operations. So their winning point and competitive advantage is going to be they are closest to their customers and they are cheapest or at the same price as their customers. So closest is guaranteed, but regarding the price, it's not very much guaranteed. So they have to minimize their waste and to forecast everything in a perfect way, just to synchronize their supply with the demand coming from the market, just to make sure they are going to capture the market share on time before things maybe shift back to the old normal. To be able to do so, people started using software. For example, let's talk about GMDH, Streamline. So for example, if you as a startup are going to work with different companies and you are going to forecast 1,000 units sold per month and the actual demand is only 800, and you keep losing production, you keep losing opportunities, you are wasting your materials, you are not buying enough materials, so you are losing sales opportunities. You are not going to be able to compete or give or deliver the quality weighted by the customer and expected from you, because again, they are expecting the same quality they are getting from the imported suppliers or the imported products. So if you are not going to be very much efficient, very much accurate, and very dynamic, you won't be able to capture the market share at these times. So I believe GMDH Streamline is going to be like a game changer with a lot of startups throughout this time, and I'm very glad that they are trying to change the game, especially with these webinars, with sharing the insights of the upcoming period of time and the opportunities that can be achieved using such an amazing software. So I guess right now I can start accepting questions.
Muchas gracias, Quirolos, por la exposición. Muy amable, muy claro. Creo que algunos temas interesantes que nos hacen pensar en lo que ha sucedido y sobre todo cómo enfrentar dentro de las compañías hacia futuro, ¿no? Cómo gestionar nuestros procesos de forma diferente, qué oportunidades pueden existir para generar negocios adicionales en las empresas. No sé si hay alguna inquietud, Carlos, si tú me ayudas mirando alguna manito por ahí. Si alguien quiere, claro, podemos abrir el audio también sin problema.
También tienen la opción de preguntas y respuestas, por si acaso. Creo que aquí hay una pregunta.
Yes,
okay.
Freddy.
Sí. We have a question.
Yeah, I believe Freddy is asking, when do you believe the container crisis is going to end? Well, honestly, right now, a lot of companies, and we are talking about only the container crisis, I believe a lot of container manufacturers right now are increasing their production capacities for containers because, yes, exactly. Actually, that's a good question. One of the drivers of this crisis is sometimes the products are there and the ship is there, but there is not enough containers to load the products into the ship. So I believe this is going to be over very soon. And this is the only positive point actually about the crisis that's going to be over.
Muchas gracias, Quirolos. No sé si hay alguna otra inquietud, si gustan alguien abrirnos el micrófono.
Okay.
No, perdón. Sí, tal vez mientras, un tema, Quirolos, una consulta.
Okay.
¿Cómo ves tú? Sí, gracias. ¿Cuán importante ves tú que es la planificación de demanda, eh, mirando en la historia, considerando que hay variables absolutamente nuevas hacia futuro, ¿no? Muchas veces cuando visitamos prospectos, compañías, nos dicen, es interesante mirar la historia, pero estamos en un entorno tan volátil que tenemos duda de que esa historia sirva o no. Y entonces deberíamos pensar a lo mejor en otros métodos distintos que la planificación de demanda basada en una historia o en un forecast. ¿Cuál es tu opinión al respecto de eso?
Okay, that's an amazing question. So during the presentation, I mentioned that now we have been moving on from an old normal to a new normal. So yes, exactly. Right now, we cannot trust the historical data when we are trying to forecast the new the new expected demand in like 2022. But let's break the word demand into two parts. So forecasting depends on quantitative ways and qualitative methods. So for the quantitative methods, that's the indicator for where the market is going in terms of numbers. So for example, we are selling 10,000 pieces each month and we are expecting 1% increase next year. So that's the where the curve is going and we should follow. But right now we are starting to value more the importance of the other qualitative forecasting method. So for example, right now you are going to monitor the supply chain crisis and you're going to see the effect of the supply chain crisis. And you're going to manual forecast and add the percentage you believe is going to whether increase or decrease in the demand. So for example, if a new curfew is taking place, so logically demand is going to decrease. So if your quantitative forecast is 100% accurate, the percentage of deviation or of inaccuracy is going to be only relevant to the qualitative means. But imagine if you're, let's say you have 10,000 units per month, that's your forecast. 50% of that is true based on quantitative numbers, but the other 50%, you are going to dedicate it yourself on qualitative and non-measurable factors like curfew or outbreak update, ports closing or opening, and many other factors. So at least right now, we are not going to aim for 100% forecast accuracy because I don't personally believe that we can do it right now with all the dynamic changes happening around us. But at least we can guarantee our quantitative calculations to be perfect. And then we can focus to minimize our deviation or our uncertainty from the qualitative part. Okay. I hope this answered your question.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Muchas gracias. Tenemos otra pregunta también de Gustavo. Está relacionada con lo que acabamos de conversar. Dice, ¿cómo llegar a un pronóstico real o cercano a la realidad con tanta incertidumbre en el mercado?
Okay. So first, you have to use a strong enough quantitative forecasting tool. For example, you can, I have tried GMDH with some case studies with me before. And they have given significant results with forecasting, especially with demand planning and material planning. So the software guaranteed me the accuracy of the quantitative part. But again, the qualitative part is not going to be based on any software, because it's going to be my responsibility as a planning or supply chain manager, because I'm the one responsible for studying the market, and I'm the one that should have eyes open, full concentration on all the drivers around me that are going to move my forecast up or down. But again, we are not being able to reach the 100% accuracy level. But instead of losing some percentages on quantitative and other percentages on qualitative, let's just minimize it into the qualitative percentages and guarantee the quantitative calculations, you know.
Muchas gracias, Quirolos. Creo que puedes leer también una pregunta que está de Carlos en el panel de Q&A.
I didn't notice. Okay, hold on. We have seen the food prices have been increased due to the lack of containers around the world, but maybe for the devaluation of currencies around the world against dollar, how can we make better forecastings in order to be covered by prices in 2022? Okay, food crisis. Actually, that's another large topic happening right now. So the food crisis is now taking place because, again, the mentality of the customers is changing into a very different and new direction. So the types of food that people were attracted to before COVID are now not the #1 priority. So people now look more often look for the nutrition facts, look for the values coming out from the food they're eating, which is leading to specific categories of food being demanded and others not being demanded. Since most of our meals have ingredients imported, hold on, I lost the question. So since we have most of our meals have ingredients imported from outside of our countries, so to be able to minimize the waste, we have to order the exact perfect amount of raw materials, specifically from the imported raw materials, which depends very much on the material planning specialists. And unfortunately, we will be having to increase our safety stocks on these times because we cannot trust the current lead times. Regarding the currency devaluations and the prices increase in food, if the shelf life is elastic enough and is long enough for you to be able to store a larger safety stock, you can do this. Is going to save you. But again, you must have, this is similar to demand planning, you must have your quantitative calculations for the materials needed for your production plan perfect, so you can depend after this on the qualitative gambling part.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias nuevamente, Quirolos. No sé si existe alguna pregunta, algún comentario adicional. Podemos aprovechar unos minutitos finales. Bueno, tal vez solo para utilizar estos últimos minutos de la presentación, agradecerle nuevamente a Quirolos por su participación, por esta charla que nos ha brindado con algunas ideas interesantes y creo que nos quedan dando vuelta en la cabeza para saber cómo aplicarlas en nuestras organizaciones.
Thank you.
Básicamente gracias a ti, Quirolos. Para comentarles sobre nosotros, somos Proactio, somos una compañía de consultoría que se especializa en la implementación de soluciones tecnológicas. Buscamos optimizar procesos y a través de esa optimización generar ventaja competitiva. Representamos a GMDH Streamline para Latinoamérica. GMDH Streamline es una solución líder para planificación de demanda y de cadena de suministro. Estamos en el mercado ya algunos años y tenemos varios clientes en la región con compañías de distinto tipo y de distinto tamaño. Un tema interesante de GMDH Streamline es la posibilidad de cubrir requerimientos de compañías grandes, medianas y pequeñas.
Mario, estamos teniendo creo que un problema. Julio Tirado nos comenta que no se oye. Yo sí te escucho perfectamente, Mario. Yo creo que Julio debería elegir el canal español y en ese caso podrías escuchar a Mario porque Mario está en el canal español. Entonces ahí me confirmas, por favor.
Puede ser, si hay alguna dificultad en escucharme, en el canal en castellano, por si acaso.
Sí, justo dice que está en el canal español.
Vamos a mirar acá la conexión también. Para quienes nos han acompañado en esta reunión, queremos ofrecer un beneficio para ustedes, una sesión de 60 minutos para revisión de su proceso sin ningún compromiso y también de ser de interés para ustedes una suscripción a la versión full de GMDH Streamline durante un tiempo limitado. Por favor, contáctenos si tienen interés en esta charla o en esta versión de demo al correo que estamos mencionando en la pantalla, info@proactio.biz. Y básicamente agradecerles nuevamente su presencia, el interés, acompañarnos en esta breve reunión. Espero haya sido de valor agregado para ustedes. Les invitamos a conocer un poquito más sobre nosotros, un poco más sobre Streamline. Dejamos un correo de contacto, unos teléfonos si ustedes quieren conversar un poco más sobre estos temas de planificación de cadena de suministro, de planificación de demanda. Digamos, con muchísimo gusto podemos hacerlo, ¿no? No sé si hay algún comentario adicional de alguien, alguna pregunta final. Muchísimas gracias entonces a todos por su participación. Thank you very much, Kirolos, again for your help and your participation. Muchísimas gracias, Salomé, por la excelente traducción que hemos tenido a lo largo de la reunión. Gracias, Carlos, también por toda la coordinación y puesta en marcha de este webinar. Gracias a todos los participantes. Un gusto tenerles con nosotros.